series. We are going to be looking at exploring the applicability of systematic reviews in social science. Our session for today is going to be held by Dr. Vivian Veitch, Director-in-Chief of Campbell Collaboration. Thank you all for joining us. Dr. Vivian, could you please can you hear me, Doctor?
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
All right, please. Thank you. The floor is all yours, and welcome. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Rosalind, for the introduction and for the invitation. It's great to meet all of you. I will see if I can share my screen. I think that's working. Which view? I think, oh, I see which view you have. Not the right one. I'm sorry, I'm using 3 screens and I'm not sure how to get the right view for you.
Okay.
I'm going to try that again. Do you see the presentation view, Rosalind?
Yes, please. I can see your slides. Thank you.
Okay. And so thanks for the introduction. I'm editor-in-chief at Campbell, and Campbell supports the production of systematic reviews in the social sectors and also their use to inform policy. Let me see. Did that advance for you, the slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. I am sharing the right screen. Excellent. I just want to give you a bit of an outline about what I want to cover. I saw a few of you in the chat were asking about the difference between or how to conduct a good systematic review in the social sectors. So I will address that. I just wanted to give a bit of background about Campbell Collaboration first. How doing reviews in social sectors might be different from health, and then how you could get involved in registering a topic with Campbell, and what are the methodological requirements to do so. I think we'll take questions at the end, and this will probably take about 25 minutes or so. So I think we'll have lots of time for questions. So as I mentioned, we support production and use of evidence synthesis. We were registered in 2000 and we are a USA not-for-profit. We also run an annual conference called the What Works Global Summit that brings together decision makers and researchers in the social sectors. And every 4 years or so, we join up with Cochrane, JBI, and Guidelines International Network for a joint conference called the Global Evidence Summit, which is this year in Prague in September. I just want to tell you a bit about our journals. We publish all of our systematic reviews in our journal, which just got an impact factor last year of 3.2. It's open access, free to publish, and has a CC-BY license, so it permits reuse and reproduction. It has over 9,000 citations. It's indexed in a number of databases. And we also publish evidence and gap maps and methods papers, which many people are not aware of. The topic areas that we cover are shown here. They cover things like aging and children, young people's well-being, as well as climate solutions, knowledge translation, social welfare, international development, and education. And we've been experiencing a growth in our publications. It's actually before the end of 2023, so it's not clear, but we are having a continual growth in our publications. We've also noted an improvement in the quality of our reviews since implementing more standards for our reviews. So the blue bar here shows you the reviews before 2018, and the orange is the since 2018. So you can see there are more high quality reviews in the more recent years. I think you all know what a systematic review is. It uses explicit criteria to identify and synthesize results of many studies, and minimizes bias and critically appraises the studies at the same time. But something that maybe if you've been involved with Cochrane, you might be less aware. Campbell publishes systematic reviews on a range of topics. So our most common type of review is an effectiveness question about what works and how well something works. But we also have reviews on risk factors, like risk factors for radicalization to extreme violence. We have qualitative evidence synthesis that seeks to understand experiences, process and implementation reviews. We've started to accept scoping reviews. We have our first living evidence synthesis registered this year. And we're open to accepting rapid evidence assessment, and we have a first pilot study ongoing now. We also publish evidence and gap maps, and I don't want to go into all that here, but an evidence and gap map helps to show evidence in a broad area, and it's usually designed in collaboration with interest holders who understand the field, like practitioners and policymakers. And it really helps to build the base for making decisions. And lastly, we accept methods research related to systematic review methods. And I won't spend a lot of time here because I think most of you are more interested in doing reviews. We've had an increase in our authorship from low and middle income countries. We'd like to grow this, so very happy to be here and to see so many people interested in Campbell. Second thing I wanted to talk about is what's different about doing a review in the social sector. And the first thing I want to convey is that many things are actually exactly the same. So we use PICOS, which is the population, intervention, comparison, outcome, and study design as a way to define the question. We use systematic searching methods. We use critical appraisal tools. We use meta-analysis to synthesize quantitative results. So there are many things that are exactly the same. Some things that are different might be different types of outcomes. So for example, in our crime and justice group, outcomes might be crime or recidivism. In our education group, there might be educational attainment on math or reading. The second thing that's different is that we might search different databases that are more specific to social sectors. The third thing that is, this could be an area that's the same or different, is that we encourage theory-based reviews with an analysis across the causal chain, and I'll show you one example in a minute. And the fourth thing is we often have broader questions than, say, a Cochrane review, and we seek to explore reasons for heterogeneity by doing things like meta-regression to understand how different factors might influence the results. So I'll just give you an example of a causal chain analysis. This was a theory-based review on farmer field schools. These are an intervention to teach farmers about pesticide use to improve crop production and eventually income of the farmers. And this systematic review used what's called a funnel of attrition to describe how they expected these schools to work. So they expected that and they use this program implementation funnel. So they expected that of 100 potential learners, many people know about it, but some might be excluded. There might be barriers to participating in the schools, actually getting to the school for the learning. And then of those who attend, maybe only 1/3 acquire the skills, even fewer adopt the practices, and then non-participant neighbors might adopt the practices, but the impact in the end is less than hoped. So what this review did was try to understand this chain in the analysis. So this is kind of a busy slide, but I hope my mouse is working and I can show you. Get the mouse here. Okay, so in the top left here, these are the knowledge test scores, and these are separated into farmer field school participants and farmer field school neighbors. And the participants, you can see the diamond is far to the right, and this means that there's a statistically significant and important effect on knowledge test scores after taking the training for the people who participate in the training. And not surprisingly, the neighbors did not benefit. So when this diamond touches the 0, it's showing no effect. And then on the right, you see pesticide use. And again, this is split into participants. Participants are at the bottom here. And you can see that pesticide use is statistically significantly lower for those who participate in the schools, but it's not changed for the neighbors. And then when you go to the yields of production, so agricultural production, again, the participants are on the bottom here, and you can see there's a statistically significant improvement in the yield for those who attended the schools. For the neighbors, there's no effect. So people have to attend the schools to get a benefit. And then when you look at revenue, the same message here, the participants is on the bottom, and they have a significant an increase in their net revenue, whereas the neighbors have a small increase in the revenue. So that's a way of looking at a causal chain analysis. And it's one of the differences between doing, say, a Campbell review and a different type of review. Then I wanted to cover how you could choose a topic and register a title. So Campbell has just been through a strategic planning that has identified the Sustainable Development Goals as a main priority for us over the next 5 years. So one way to justify a new review is to base that on policy relevance and need. And this is an example of a review which actually justified the question on the basis of a local policy, the United Kingdom generational divide, which is also acceptable in Campbell reviews. We tend to have global reviews, global questions, but the motivation may be situated in a more local policy context. And then this is a step of doing a review that is common to health reviews, is scoping the topic. So what other reviews exist on the topic already? Just because there are other reviews doesn't mean that you cannot do a Campbell review. What our editorial team is looking for is, how does your review add value? So why is it needed? Does it have different policy contexts, different outcomes, or maybe it'll do a better job at critically appraising the studies or analyzing the causal chain. So in the intergenerational review that was focused on bringing young people and older people together, an example of how they scoped the topic, although there were other reviews on the topic, they showed that their review would have a more focus on well-being and mental health, would focus on quantitative studies, be more comprehensive. And the fourth item here is really important, and it's also characteristic of social science reviews, is that they would provide more detail on exactly what was included in intergenerational activity. So what was the type of activity, the level of contact, the setting and duration. So one thing which is often not done very well, even in Campbell reviews, is describing the interventions and the context of the interventions. And that really is a difference with these complex social sector interventions. There needs to be a really good description of what the intervention consisted of. Then deciding on the focus, we often see people define reviews too broadly or too narrowly. And some things to consider are the PICOs that I mentioned already to help you define the focus to an answerable question. I'm just going to skip ahead with this slide. So these are a couple of examples of well-defined questions. So this is a Campbell Systematic Review on the impact of the adult-child ratio and the group size on child development and well-being in non-parental early childhood education settings. And you can see we broke out how this defines the intervention, the population outcomes very specifically, so that the eligibility criteria is straightforward to apply. And this is quite complicated when you're looking at social sector interventions, and there may be multiple interventions being done at the same time or in the same context as your intervention that you're interested in. The next step is building a team. So in Campbell, we actually have a rule that reviews cannot be written by one person. You need to have content expertise, statistics, information specialist expertise, and you likely need people to support with data collection and data extraction. It's optional to have an advisory board, but many Campbell reviews do include perspectives of stakeholders in an advisory capacity. And this is a way to bring that sort of policy context and relevance to your review team. And then we use a system called Scholar One to submit your title. And I think I'll show you later exactly how to do that. So the methodological requirements, again, these are very similar to Cochrane. If some of you are familiar with Cochrane, I think I saw someone from a Cochrane Center in the chat. We have methodological expectations for Campbell collaboration intervention reviews. These are on our journal website. We have checklists for evidence and gap maps. And for other reviews that you're submitting to Campbell, we use other guidance. So for example, for scoping reviews, JBI has excellent guidance on how to do scoping reviews. And we recommend that our authors use that guidance. So the method expectations can help you structure your methods. There are two checklists, one for conduct and one for reporting. They're quite long, something like 150 items, but they really help with the steps of doing a review. And they're almost the same as the Cochrane methodological expectations. At this, I didn't update the date of this to a bit later in 2024, but we are revising our methodological expectations to what we're calling Campbell standards. These are only 31 items, and they cover the 7 steps of the review outlined here: the scope, eligibility criteria, search strategy, screening, coding, synthesis, interpretation. But it's much shorter than the methodological expectations, and we think it will make it easier to follow the expectations and easier for editors to assess those expectations. So we're hoping that makes a difference to the quality of our reviews and the quality of the experience of authors participating in Campbell. We have free online Campbell training. This is from an initiative called the Open Learning Initiative at Carnegie Mellon. It was developed by leaders in Campbell. I don't have their names here, but Julia Littell, Jeff Valentine, Sarah Young were involved in developing these materials. There are 5 modules, and they're really useful self-paced learning activity for learning how to do Campbell reviews. I think I wanted to skip to writing your review. I think this is exactly the same as a health review. So you want to describe how you did your review according to your protocol. And you want to describe any differences from your protocol with justification. And I put here an example of a deviation from protocol. You know, it's not a bad thing to deviate from protocol. So we encourage people to provide details on what changed since the protocol, if there were changes. Something that is coming soon is machine learning, especially for supporting writing. We have a policy on using machine learning in writing, that it should be described as per the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors Guidance. And there are many tools for machine learning in different steps of the review. These are common to health reviews as to social sector reviews. I think the difference is that there's maybe less testing on how well these work for complex social interventions. And so there is a lot of doubt about whether machine learning can sufficiently learn how to identify and screen social systems reviews that many people are working on testing right now. So I think if you do use machine learning, you need to justify its use and describe what you did. So I think I wanted to end with we very much welcome you to get involved. We're just setting up an editorial advisory board of peer referees. So if any of you are interested in starting in a small way with Campbell, we welcome you to join as a peer referee. The only expectation there is to review 3 or 4 articles per year, and that you have substantive content knowledge in one of the topic areas of Campbell. So if you're interested, please get in touch and we'll add you to our advisory board that will be listed on our journal page. And we provide tools to do the referee process. And you don't need to be an expert in systematic reviews, because we have methodological reviewers who have reviewed the methods. What we're looking for are people who understand the interventions and the problems that are being studied. We're always welcoming new editors and methods editors. We have the competencies for these published on our journal website. One of the competencies is to have completed a Campbell or Cochrane review. So this might be of interest to some of you. We're going to start an early career researcher network that we are planning to launch in September. And we definitely welcome any of you who are interested. We welcome authors. We had an open call for board members last year, and we expect to repeat those sorts of open calls. And I think, as I mentioned, we do have a submission page on our journal page, which is Submit a Proposal. And this provides details on how to submit a proposal. It's a web-based form that asks you to define the scope of your review. And I think that's it. So thank you. I'll probably stop sharing my screen. And welcome questions. My screen. Yeah. Okay. I see there's 56 new messages, so I'm probably slow at reading if there are questions here. I see there's one about, is a Campbell review registry like Prospero or a reporting system like Prisma? So registering a Campbell systematic review title and registering the protocol with Campbell is like Prospero, except that you get peer review of your protocol. So in a sense, it's enhanced Prospero. So you can treat it like a registration. In our Campbell standards, we ask all authors to provide a Prisma flowchart. So Prisma is a reporting guideline for systematic reviews about what you should report. Our methodological expectations that I mentioned has all the elements of Prisma, but our new Campbell standards encourages using a Prisma reporting checklist. So it's a bit of both. I don't know if there were more. I'm scrolling back through the chat to see if there are other questions. So what are Campbell reviews? Is it like Cochrane? Yes, so there's a question from Beatrice. So Campbell reviews are like Cochrane reviews. They are the same, except as I mentioned, Campbell reviews accept a diverse range of reviews like scoping reviews, risk factor reviews, association reviews. And Campbell works like Cochrane in that we have a title registration, a protocol, so pre-planned protocol registration, and then the full review. So it's a step approach. I'm still going back through the questions. Okay. I don't see more questions. Oh, I do see another question about how is a scoping review different from a systematic review? Yeah, that's a great question, Teresa. Thank you. A systematic review, I mean, a scoping review is a systematic approach. What's different with a scoping review is that they typically don't summarize the effectiveness of interventions. They are typically used to explore a broad area. So they map or assess different types of outcomes, different types of interventions, different types of study designs, but they don't do an analysis of the effectiveness of the interventions, usually. And they usually don't appraise the quality of the studies and the reviews that they assess. Whereas a systematic review of effectiveness will critically appraise the studies that are included, will conduct some kind of synthesis, quantitative or qualitative, for effectiveness. Okay, there's lots more questions coming in. Thank you. So what makes a difference between systematic review literature in social science and that in pure science, or rather in maybe medical sciences? I think, like I said, there's many similarities. So I'm not sure there is a huge difference, except the questions are different, the outcomes are different, where you search might be different. I mean, there are some common features that are different. So social science reviews tend to have more studies included because they take a broader approach to defining an intervention. So for example, a medical systematic review might be looking at the effectiveness of a type of surgery or pharmacological treatment. And those there might be fewer studies of those than there are of things like hotspots policing, for example, is one of our Campbell systematic reviews, where there are a number of studies of different ways of monitoring places where there is a high rate of crime to reduce crime in those neighborhoods. And then the second feature that I described, having a theory base for something like hotspots policing, there are often a wide range of outcomes. So they could include things like broken windows, break-ins, stolen cars, and the effectiveness of hotspots policing might be measured with any of those types of outcomes. So you might combine different types of outcomes to understand effectiveness. Other than peer review, which other services does Campbell offer to a systematic review novice? Yeah, that's a great question, Jackson. So, I mean, Campbell, you know, Phil works on the basis of the 3 stages, and our editors provide quite a lot of support to help refine the question and to point authors to tools to support them. However, we do work like a journal, so we don't, we aren't able to mentor a team. Our editors don't mentor a team. That's why we develop those training materials, so that there are freely available materials for training. And we also offer the structure of our templates for doing a review. But again, those are very similar to Cochrane templates. And so I think the biggest offer is that once your title is accepted, your editor is committed to providing you feedback on your protocol to improve it. And that feedback is quite useful, especially at the protocol stage, to get a good question. Can you add a link to the training materials? Would you like it in the chat? Let's see if I can get that in the chat. I'm happy to share my slides, and I'm just going to put the training link in the chat. So I put the link in the chat, and then the question about the difference between systematic and scoping review: does the number of papers determine which review to perform? So thank you for the question, Shamanu. I hope I said your name correctly. So So it's not necessarily the number of papers that determines the type of review, it's your question. So if your question is, how effective are farmer field schools, then you want to do a systematic review of effectiveness. But if your question is, what types of outcomes are used to measure effectiveness of farmer field schools, then a scoping review might be better, because you can include a wide range of studies, but look at all the types of outcomes. And you might have things, like I mentioned, the crop production, knowledge, income, etc. So it's really your question. There's actually a tool called the Write tool. And I can look for it and put it in the chat. It was developed by Andrea Trico and colleagues. And it's a series of about 5 or 6 questions, and it helps you to decide what type of review to perform. I've just put the link in the chat. So that tool might help you decide which review is right for you. And then, is registration done before or after peer review?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Vivian. I'm
Yes.
sorry to pop in. I don't know, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Your slide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I was just answering the questions in the chat. So
Okay.
there was another question about, is registration done before or after peer review? So we register the title on the basis of review by an editor. So there's no external review of the title registration. But then you're asked to submit a protocol to define all the methods of your review. That protocol is subjected to peer review. So your protocol will be peer reviewed. But the title is registered, and the title will be published on our journal website before peer review. The only assessment is by an editor. Still lots of questions. Ahmad, how can researchers ensure the reproducibility and transparency of their systematic review methodology in social sciences? And how can systematic reviews in social sciences contribute to evidence-based policy and practice? What are the potential pitfalls in translating research findings into real-world applications? So I think the first question about reproducibility and transparency, this is about defining your methods before you start. So your methods are defined based on your questions, not on the data you find, and transparently describing your methods using things like our methodological expectations. The question about contributing to evidence-based policy and practice, I mean, this is a whole other area. What Campbell does, I would say, and this maybe ties into one of the earlier questions about additional services from Campbell, is Campbell has a number of relationships with policy and decision makers globally and in specific countries. And we produce plain language summaries for all of our reviews to help summarize the results for a policymaker audience. There's a challenge of assessing generalizability of the findings of a review to other settings. Reviews are meant to show what evidence is there, not to make recommendations. So I think the potential pitfall is reviews making recommendations. Campbell and Cochrane both insist that reviews do not make recommendations. They can make conclusions about implications for research and policy, but not recommend specific practices. And that's because a number of things in the context might decide whether to implement something, not just the findings of the review. Then, do we always use qualitative in social science? That's a great question. I can't see your whole name, but Dr. Abdi. So definitely not. Actually, most Campbell reviews do not use qualitative evidence synthesis, although we definitely welcome it and we'd love to see more qualitative synthesis. The social sciences have a number of randomized trials. I didn't show those slides, but there are a huge number of randomized trials in education, criminology that that really need to be summarized for policymakers. So many of our reviews do focus on randomized trials. We do often include non-randomized studies where relevant. So there are some things which are difficult to randomize, and one example is year-round education for schools. So that's a system of having much shorter summer breaks, but having other breaks spread out through the year. And that review, all of the studies are non-randomized studies, I believe. And then I see Rosalind, you're posting about the mentorship program, mentors and mentees can apply. That sounds fantastic, opportunity for people. And yeah, there are questions in the Q&A box. Okay, I'm going to see where the Q&A box is. So is it applicable for science and technology domains, machine learning articles on Scopus, for example, from Mohammed? I'm not totally sure, but machine learning is definitely being applied in the screening stage of Campbell reviews. So many of the softwares that people use for carrying out a systematic review, like Epi Reviewer, Covidence, Distiller, have machine learning for screening so that it prioritizes the articles. And I guess the question that people in social sciences have is the machine learning at risk of missing articles because we tend to have complex questions. So we do accept machine learning, but just with the caveat that we don't know how well it works for social science reviews. Okay, and then a guideline sample for scoping review. So scoping reviews, the best source for guidance on scoping reviews is from the Joanna Briggs Institute. And I'm just going to put it into the chat to everyone. This is their JBI manual. And then Godfrey, what makes the difference between systematic review and social or pure science? I think I already answered that one. Dr. Abdi asked about plagiarism. So we do have a plagiarism checker in our editorial software. How much is allowed? You know, there is a lot of self-citation between the review and the protocol, and that's understood. So that type of plagiarism is allowed, but plagiarizing sections of text without quotations or plagiarizing material without attribution is not allowed. And I think those rules for plagiarism are common to other journals. So we follow the COPE guidelines, the Committee of Publication Ethics, of which we're a member to assess that. Janet Kamali, resources on scoping reviews. So I included the link to JBI for scoping reviews. And if you wanted to have a session on scoping reviews, I really encourage reaching out to someone at JBI, like Zachary Munn or Daniel Pollock. They're both excellent at scoping reviews. Okay, and then Dr. Ogunwale, what are specific areas of applicability of the systematic review on social science? So all of our reviews have a section on applicability and generalizability of results where we ask authors to assess how generalizable or how applicable they think their results are given the studies they found. I'm not totally sure if that's answering your question, so you can check, let me know. And then while conducting a systematic SLR, how generalized themes can be extracted. I think that's a complicated, I'm not sure if you mean a living review there. so there are different approaches to thematic analysis. Some start with a framework, like framework synthesis, and some are more inductive. So they build the thematic framework as they go. So I think, that's a much longer question for how to do that. But there is a Cochrane Handbook chapter on qualitative evidence synthesis. So if you're interested in qualitative evidence synthesis, I encourage you to look at the Cochrane Handbook on qualitative evidence synthesis. And there's a new handbook on qualitative evidence synthesis coming out, where Campbell was a collaborator. So those that guidance applies to both Cochrane and Campbell. Recommended machine learning. So I actually don't have any recommended machine learning. What I was saying is that the software that many people use, and I'll just type those in the chat, Distiller, Confidence, Epi Reviewer, they all have machine learning embedded inside them. And there's another one called Abstract R. And they all use the same algorithm for machine learning actually underneath the, that you can't see. And we accept the use of that for screening. We don't accept cutoffs unless those cutoffs can be really well defined. Okay, so I've answered that. Is it possible to do meta-analysis in Stata? I'm actually not sure. I'm not a Stata user. I do know that about a quarter of Campbell reviews use Stata for their meta-analysis. I'm not sure if it's Stata 17 though. So we do accept Stata analyses, but I'm not sure of the capabilities. Another question, are the results of the systematic review to be expressed in a pre-specified format? So we have a template for reporting our reviews, and we encourage people to use that template because it has required headings that make sure you cover the methods that are required in Campbell reviews. So that's the format we use. We don't have a requirement about what type of software to use, but that software, should do the methods that you describe in your protocol. Free software to conduct meta-analysis for a prevalence study. The best and most free software for conducting meta-analysis, in my opinion, is Metaphor, and it's in R. And I'm not totally sure if it has meta-analysis for prevalence, but I suspect that it does. The person who developed Metaphor is Wolfgang. I'm going to put his name in the chat. Wolfgang Liebrecht. Might be getting his last name wrong. And he regularly runs training on Metaphor that is free and online. And I'm just looking to see if I can find. Well, I'll put the link to the Metaphor package in the chat. But Wolfgang regularly runs training. It's usually over 2 or 3 days because quite a lot of training required to use the Metaphor software. But once you know how, it's an excellent package. Okay. All right, Fortune, I went through the Q&A. I think there have been a lot of comments in the chat, but these are mainly about the mentee and mentorship program, which sounds fantastic. So I think I've answered all the questions, Fortune and Rosalind. It's a really, thank you so much for all these questions. It's really great to meet all of you and hear of your interest in Campbell. Are there resources for accounting or finance?
Thank you.
Yeah.
From Vivian.
Yes. Thank
I
you,
don't know.
Rosalind.
Um, um, someone is asking in the chat box, are there resources for accounting/finance?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. For doing a review, I guess.
I guess as well.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. But it's a nice question.
I think we no longer have questions coming in. I don't think so. No more questions. I'm checking. Okay, that being said, thank you, Dr. Vivian, for coming and joining us in today's event. We are grateful to our participants. I can see we have participants from different parts. Oh my God, I have another question here. How many search engines should be used for systematic review?
I think that we officially say at least 3. So by search engine, I think you mean like electronic databases. And our recommendation is at least 3, but it could be more. And we recommend using, other methods beyond electronic databases, especially since in social sector, reviews are different names and terms for different types of complex interventions. So they may be quite difficult to be indexed in electronic databases. And also in the social sector, and this is maybe a bit different from health, there are sometimes many unpublished reports. So some of our reviews have more than half of their included studies are unpublished government reports in areas of education and policing. So I think when you're designing the search, you really have to know your topic area to design that search.
I think for the person asking on finance, there is a link on the chat box. I'm not sure who has posted that. I don't know. And another question is, can you give us a clear difference between meta-analysis and NMA?
Sure. I mean, NMA is a form of meta-analysis, but it's a network meta-analysis. So meta-analysis is assessing the comparison of one intervention to another intervention. It could be a do nothing comparison, or it could be an active intervention. But a network meta-analysis puts all the interventions for a particular problem into a network, and then can analyze how different interventions have been compared with each other. So is especially good when there are many different types of interventions for a particular problem, and some of them have been compared and some of them have not been compared. So it helps you make those direct comparisons. And then it helps you also understand comparisons of interventions that might not have been studied or compared in a trial. So we have a policy guidance on network meta-analysis, a bit old now in Campbell, but the Cochrane Handbook has a chapter on network meta-analysis that's very useful.
Thank you, Dr. Vivian. Another question is, can I do a systematic review on language studies?
I think so. It depends on your question. So I know we do have a couple of systematic reviews in our education group on things like how to teach people in their second language. So for example, in Canada, we have a lot of immigrants, and those children are have to study math in their second language, or maybe their third language. So there are some systematic reviews on what are some tools to support people learning in their not in their first language. I'm not sure if that's the type of question you're asking about language studies, but possibly that could be registered with Campbell. Depends on
Is
the.
there a minimum number of papers I should include in a systematic review per database?
So there's no minimum number. We do have systematic reviews that don't have any included studies. When you're doing searching in an electronic database, you need to download and assess all of the studies that are found by your search strategy. And if there are really too many, then you maybe need to design your search strategy to be more focused. And librarian scientists are very good at helping to narrow down the search so that you don't have as many articles to screen.
Another question is, can we register systematic reviews and meta-analysis of effective studies out of social science within Campbell collaboration?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, Campbell includes all reviews of social sector that across the topics that I mentioned. If your review question doesn't fall in the scope of Campbell, then we probably wouldn't register it. But our scope is quite broad, so please get in touch. I hope that it fits.
Okay, I think we have no more questions. I'm just going to give about 2 more minutes so we don't go. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. In case we don't have questions, then we can wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. I think there are more questions. I'm very happy for people to email. There's one question about specific databases. We don't have specific databases because our remit is so broad. So there are databases like PsycInfo, Social Sciences Abstract, CINAHL, which covers allied health. But it really depends on your question, which databases to search.
There are hands raised, so I'm going to. Okay, let me check the chat box first. I think we have more questions here. Someone is asking, I am working on malaria modeling. Can I do systematic review on malaria control?
Yeah, probably. So the our international development group does register questions on malaria, malaria control, and possibly modeling studies. It could fit with Cochrane infectious diseases, but yes, I think it would fit with Campbell. So I think that would be fine. I think there's a question about submitting a protocol after starting a review. So the answer to that is not really, because you need to register your protocol before starting the review. That's the whole principle of having the pre-registration of the protocol, to make your methods transparent before you start. However, we do have a method of what we call Campbellization. So if you publish your protocol somewhere else, like the Open Science Framework or Prospero even, as long as it has sufficient detail about the methods that you're going to use, then you can submit your full systematic review to Campbell and ask for it to be considered as what we call Campbellization, in that your protocol is published somewhere else, not in Campbell, but you'd like to publish your review in Campbell. So we do have that process available, but it does require that your protocol meets our methodological expectations and standards. So it's not a guaranteed publication, but we definitely welcome people inquiring about that process. And you could write to me. I put my name in my email in the chat, and happy to answer more questions about that process.
Probably we have already responded to this question. Can you tell a situation where meta-analysis is not possible, but network analysis is possible? I think we've responded to this earlier on. And the next question is, please tell me free software to conduct meta-analysis for prevalence study.
Yeah, I answered that. I suggest metaphor, and I put it in the chat.
Okay, so we are going to, he's the person who asked about the question around protocol registration, why he or she has already started working, is for asking a follow-up question. Can anything be done if I have started the review already, but I have not submitted the protocol?
Well, like I said, you could register your protocol somewhere like Open Science Framework. They have a section for protocols. It's not peer reviewed, so but you can place your protocol there. And then that protocol can be used to assess your review when it's done. That's my only suggestion. Happy for you to write to me after if that's not enough.
Okay, we are going to take hands. We have Olivier Notu. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, the pronunciation of your name. Your hand is raised up. Can you unmute yourself and speak? Thank you. Olivier?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, my question is a little bit outside systematic review. That's why I didn't write it. I just want to see if I can ask. Like I want to conduct correlation tests between land cover, land use, and population density in the research. So how do I do that? How do I conduct that correlation test? That's the question.
Yeah, so but it's not a systematic review. You want to do an evaluation study or an association study of land use with
Correlation.
population. Yeah. It's not my area of expertise, but so I think you could there is the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has an evaluation series that has quite a lot of excellent webinars on designing evaluation studies, like the one you're asking about, Oliver. So that might be a resource for you. And I believe there's a webinar coming up by Campbell South Asia in a week or so. Campbell South Asia is a Campbell Center based in Delhi, and they've just started a new webinar series. And the one coming up very soon, I just saw it yesterday. Howard White will be speaking about evaluation studies, so that might be a resource for you.
All right, I think we no longer have questions coming in. This has been a very wonderful webinar. As wrap-up message, I've learned that Campbell collaboration was established in the year 2000, and they register systematic reviews and meta-analysis, including scoping reviews, with an impact factor of already 3.2, and having already 9,000 citations, freely published articles, and a reminder of the Global Summit coming up in September. Let's endeavor to participate. I also like to mention the updates in ACSRM, the Menti mentorship program, which the deadline is tomorrow. I also like to throw more light on the fact that we are having more beautiful and engaging webinar series such as the one we have today happening next month, looking at different tools for systematic reviews and also the role of AI in systematic reviews. Just as a reminder, links to these slides or the slides we have Dr. Vivian has used today will be shared later via email. I would also like to thank all our participants from different parts of the world. I could see Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and different parts of Africa that I can't mention all. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Dr. Vivian. We look forward to having different engaging sessions just as this one. And we hope that we're going to have more people reaching out in the with a desire conducting systematic reviews and meta-analysis in this sphere. Thank you everyone for coming. And I believe this will be the end of our webinar. If you have any question, I believe Dr. Vivian has already dropped her email address, ACSRM email address as well. And you can reach out to us for more details. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of your evening, day, and morning. Thank you, and have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr.
Rosalind.
Vivian.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.